Hey, what's going on, y'all? So we got to talk. Um, I continue to get the same question in the last video that I made over and over and over, and I figured I'd make a video to answer that question because I think it's a really good question. So the video that I'm referring to is the video that I made called "I Own Three Schools and $2 million in Real Estate." Why Dr. Umar Johnson's story doesn't add up. So I made the video about Dr. Umar Johnson because he's entertaining to me. He says a lot of weird, offensive stuff that I don't agree with, but he's entertaining. And that's part of why I wanted to make that video. The other part of the reason why I wanted to make the video is because I do have some experience in what he's doing. So I wanted to be able to show he's saying that he's building this school, he's doing renovations. So I wanted to compare the renovations he's doing on his school with the renovations that I've done on one of the preschools that I own. Okay, so that was the reason for the video. But like I said earlier, I continue to get that question, where did you get your money from? So I figured I'd make this video here. First, let's go ahead and get the elephant out of the room because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same question when they ask, or they're thinking the same thing when they hear that question, like where'd you get your money from? Typically, what people are asking is, do you got rich parents or rich uncles or something? Like, did your grandpa leave you a bunch of money? And I can tell you that is not the case. All right. So let's go ahead and throw that out the window from the jump. All right. So I was born into poverty like a lot of people. Um, my mom and dad tells a story about my dad. When I was born, my dad was an alcoholic. Okay. Thankfully, he got his life turned around when I was like 7 years old or so. But when I was born, he was an alcoholic. And I mean a real alcoholic. Go to sleep with a cup of gin next to the table or next to the bed that you're sleeping on, drinking that, and then wake up in the morning drinking that same cup of gin. That kind of alcoholic, a real one. So my mom kept a job. She worked her butt off all the time. She was at work. I was sick at home with the chicken pox because I got them from my cousin. So my dad was sleeping in the bed. He had me sleep at the foot of the bed, and I was 2 years old. So the chicken pox, I ended up getting a crazy fever with it. And then he woke up because he felt something shaking in the bed. So he looked down, he saw his baby, me, shaking, having a seizure. So he grabbed me and picked me up, and he said that my face, my lips, and everything was blue. And then I just completely stopped breathing. So thankfully, he was thinking. He jumped out the door, ran across the street to a lady named Wendy Howard, who I still talk to till this day. She was a registered nurse. She did something to resuscitate me and bring me back to life. True story. So I tell that story just to say, like, that's what we that's what I was born into. So please don't think that I was born into a silver spoon lifestyle. It wasn't like that. At the same time, I want to clarify something else. I was not raised poor either. I was raised in middle class life. Like my dad, when I was 7 years old, he got his life turned around and stuff. He got things figured out as far as the alcoholism goes. He was able to keep a job. So from the time I was about 7 till I was like 17 or so, we were firmly in the middle class. So don't give me too much credit for being born into poverty because I was raised middle class. So let's go ahead and say that. Okay. All right. So the part that I want to explain, that I want to start at, is when I was in college, actually. So I went to college at a place called Wichita State University. If you know the mascot of Wichita State University, please leave that in the comment section. I'm interested to know how many folks have heard of Wichita State University. That's where I got my business degree from. So I was at school, working at a call center, did that for 4 years. Worst job of my entire life. Hate call centers. If you were around during 2004, 2005, 2006, you know this is before the smartphone era, so you would dial 411 if you were looking for a phone number or an address. Well, at that call center, I was the person that would pick the phone up and say what city and state, and I would give you whatever number you're looking for. That was me. Did it for 4 years. It sucked. Horrible job. So right before I graduated, I think it was like actually probably about 7 months before I graduated, I started putting this plan together. I was like, I want to be like an executive for a big retail store or just a big known company like AT&T or Pepsi or something like that. I want to be an executive for a big company. And I thought the only way I could do that is by working my way up the ladder because I didn't have any cousins, any uncles, any parents that had pull like that or any relationships that could help me get up in the ladder. So I said, I just got to start from the bottom, get a promotion, get another promotion, and work my way up. And then I tried to get a promotion at this call center multiple times, and it just wasn't working for me. So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to a place where I should be able to get a promotion pretty quickly as long as I show up every day and I respond to everything people are asking me and I work hard. And I was like, so what could I do? Like, where could I do that at? And I said, I'm gonna work at Target. That's what I decided. I'm gonna go to Target. I'm gonna work harder than everybody. I'm gonna show up to work on time every single day. I'm just gonna outwork everybody. They'll notice it and they'll give me a raise eventually. And honestly, that's just about what happened. Like I got there, anytime you've seen like at Target, if you go to Target or Walmart, when the cashier has a line of like 10 people, typically they call somebody for backup. They'll say, I need backup at the registers. Well, I was the person who would be walking through the aisles and I would help you find what you were looking for. I would put stuff on the shelves and all that stuff. So whenever somebody would call and ask for help at the front for a cashier, I would respond every single time. In the year that I was there, I never missed one day. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I did miss one day of work because I had to call in to go to my college graduation. It's the only day I missed. Never was late. I was the perfect employee. I was there for about 13 months. So I was there for 13 months, right? So in each of those 13 months, I got some kind of award, whether it was Employee of the Month, Employee of the Week, something. I got an award every single month that I was there. 13 straight, like 13 straight months. It's kind of crazy, right? Unheard of. So it was like my 6th or 7th month that I was there. People recognized the work that I was doing and they found out that I was about to graduate. So I ended up getting a promotion to oversee the grocery side of things, the grocery side of the store. I did that part really, really well. So one of the HR managers reached out to me and said, hey man, I hear that you're about to get your college degree. Would you be interested in being an executive here? The job paid, I think, $45,000 to start, which at that time was a lot of money for me. I was like, man, please. I think I was making $9.50 at that time. I was like, please let me get that job. So he said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull you into this office. I think it was 2 or 3 times a week. His name is Jason Cox. Super cool dude. He was like, I'm going to pull you into this office 2 or 3 times a week, and we're going to go over the interview process for the executive job at Target. He said, I know who's going to interview you. I know what questions he's going to ask. I know what types of answers you have to give based on the examples and things. He said, so we're just going to practice this stuff every week until your interview. And that's exactly what we did. At first, I started off, I was stuttering. I was doing a bunch of, didn't know how to respond to stuff like these questions I was getting. But by the time like the interview came, because I think we practiced for about 6 straight weeks. So by the time the interview came, I was knocking these questions out the park. I had the stuff memorized basically. I knew what questions were coming first, what question was probably going to come second. I think he was supposed to ask a total of 7 questions, and they were all questions like, tell me about a time when you had to show leadership in a situation because no one else knew what to do. And you had to come up with an example of something that you did while at Target to show that example. So you had to have basically a story that matched every question that they were going to ask. And I had all my stuff ready to go. So I show up to the interview. I actually remember sitting at the table, waiting for them to call me back. I remember exactly what that room looked like because I told myself, and this sounds crazy, I know, but I told myself, take a mental picture of this so you can always remember it because your life is about to change for the better. I remember I was that excited for it. I said, take a mental picture of this room so you can always remember what it looked like because your life is about to change. And you can always look back at this and say, that's when my life changed for the better right then. To this day, I still remember what that room looked like. I could almost draw a picture of it. It's crazy. So the regional manager walked out. No, I'm sorry, he didn't walk out. A lady, a receptionist came up to me and she was like, hey, he's ready to, I don't want to say his name, but she was like, hey, he's ready to see you for your interview. So I said, okay, cool. So we walk to to his office, and he opened the door. First, she knocked on the door and said, "Jordan's here." So he opened the door, and he had like this shock on his face. I'm not going to say why, but just know he had this crazy shock on his face. It was obvious he did not expect me. It was obvious. So I shook his hand like you're supposed to do, introduced myself. So he said, "Okay, come on in." So I walk in and I stood by the chair and he said, "Have a seat." So I went ahead and have a seat. So he sat in the chair and he leaned back, crossed his legs and looked at me just like this, looking confused, just staring at me, waiting on me to say something, I guess. He was just, then he said, "Jordan?" I said, "Yeah." Well, I said, "Yes, sir," actually. He's like, "How long have you worked at Target?" So I said, "About 13 months now." He said, "Okay." He was like, "You know, I've heard that you've done some exceptional work here so far. What I'd like you to do is continue to work a little bit longer, get some more experience under your belt. And once you get some more experience, come back and do another interview and we'll see if it works out then." That was the end of the interview. It was over. I got one question, and that question was not even supposed to be on the test. Like, that was not one of the 7 questions. So he asked me, "How long have I been at Target?" I answered the question, and he was like, "Okay." And that was the end of it. So he walked me out. I drove back to my Target location and explained to Jason what happened. Jason looked like he wanted to cry. He just shook his head like, "Man, that's crazy." And that was the end of it. So right after that, I started doing like applications, looking for a management job because I was just about to graduate. Well, I had actually just graduated at that point. So I just got my bachelor's degree in business. And I said, "Man, I'm going to go out here. I've gotten a little bit of experience as a supervisor at Target," right? So I started as a line level employee at Target. I got a promotion as what's called a food assistant, overseeing the food side of the business. Then I got a supervisor job. So I got 2 promotions. I said, now I can actually put this experience on a resume and I can add that, couple it with the fact that I have now a business degree. Somebody's going to hire me for a management job. So I just started applying at all these different management positions that I could find. The one job that ended up hiring me was a group that just, I don't want to say the name of the company, but it was a building maintenance company. And to let you know how naive I was at the time, I had no idea what a building maintenance company was. I didn't even know what they did. I just knew they were paying $32,000 to start. And I was like, I need that money. That sounds wonderful, because I wasn't making anywhere close to that at the time. So I went, interviewed for this building maintenance position, uh, got that job. So I ended up showing up to that job first day. And I noticed all the employees were talking about cleaning bathrooms. They were talking about wanting new mop heads. They were talking about all the stuff that referred to cleaning. And I'm like, is this a cleaning company? That just tells you how naive I was. I got a job for a company. It was a building maintenance company. Like the company even says building maintenance in the name of the company. It's like the owner's last name, building maintenance, is the name of the company. I had no idea what the company did. So if you know anything about where I live, it's called the air capital of the world, is the nickname of the city where I live, because we build so many airplanes here. It's crazy. So the facility that I got a job at overseeing the cleaning company was this big place called Spirit Aerosystems. They have like 12,000 people. It's 11.5 million square feet. Huge facility. And I was the second person in charge of all 105 employees that cleaned all 50 something of those buildings. So it's a pretty big job to jump into. Second in charge of 105 employees. I did that job extremely well. Ended up getting a promotion from assistant manager to site manager, overseeing everything. That job, the company made $248,000 a month. I remember that. That's the account that I oversaw. It was a pretty good account. Um, So I did that job really well. I ended up getting, so whenever I got a promotion, my boss got a promotion, right? So first I was an assistant manager, then there was a manager. And then whenever I got that promotion, my boss also got a promotion. So instead of him just becoming the new regional manager, he wanted to add a person in between us. So that person in between us ended up being an older white gentleman. I'm not going to say his name either. I'm not going to air him out. But he was an older white gentleman. So I had a brand new boss. I had never met him before, didn't know anything about me. I didn't know anything about him. I just knew he was about 65 years old, white guy. He had just lost a job and he had just gotten fired and he was hired into this position. So one day, after about 2 months on the job, maybe 3 months on the job, maybe 3 months on the job, he calls and asks me to come to the office to go over the budget on the whiteboard. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll be there in a little bit. So I drive there and we're going over the budget like we're supposed to be doing. And out of nowhere, he says, and I've told this story on this channel before, out of nowhere, he says, Jordan, did I ever tell you what we used to do when I was younger, like for fun? And I said, no. He said we would drive to the black neighborhoods. We would throw bottles at black people, call them N-words, and when they got mad and started running after us, we would drive off. I was pissed. Like, I couldn't believe it because he didn't say N-word. He actually said the word. This 65-year-old white guy just said the N-word to me, and it's just he and I in this room. I'm like, what? So, needless to say, I ended that conversation super quick. Ended up going to HR. I called and told HR what had just happened. Just a few days later, I think it was maybe 2 weeks later, I ended up getting fired from that job. Yes, I reported him saying the N word to me, and I got fired. Couldn't believe it. So I know, can't make this stuff up. It will all be in the book that I'm writing right now. I plan on having it finished before December. So ended up getting fired, have no job. Uh, my so I got fired on a Friday. The next morning, we're laying in bed, and my wife says, I either just peed on myself real bad or my water just broke. Yes, we were 9+ months pregnant at this time that I got fired. The next day, we had my first child. So I got fired on Friday. My wife wakes up on Saturday. Her water's broke super early, and we ended up having my daughter later on that night. First child, too. We were like, our heads were spinning, right? Just like yours would be. Head spinning like crazy. So my wife, at the time, was working at a daycare center. She was raised in a daycare center. She loves kids. She got her master's in educational psychology. She loves kids. So a couple months passed, a couple months after we had the child, I started talking to my wife and I'm like, man, we need to start owning stuff. Like, why are we working for people? Like, they're not going to do us right. They're not going to give us a fair shake at this. We're not going to get the opportunities that we deserve. We need to start our own businesses, do our own thing. And like I said, I was still unemployed, trying to figure life out. And she was working at a daycare center. So I'm like, why don't you just quit that daycare center and let's start our own daycare center? And neither one of us has anyone in our families, cousins, aunts, none of that stuff that owns businesses. We've never had any type of experience in that before. But I was just fed up. Excuse me. I was just fed up of people telling us when to be at work, when to leave, how much we gonna make. Like, I was tired of it. I could not stand that anymore. So she was like, I hear you. I think I'm on that. I'm on that. So she started reaching out to the state of Kansas, asking, how do we have a daycare center in our house? How do we actually have a home daycare center? What do we need to do? How do we need to do this? How do we need to do that? We didn't even know how to start, like how to file a name of a business. We just researching stuff on YouTube and typing in Google how to start a business. So we were doing stuff like that. Well, anyway, the state started coming around. They started teaching us what to do here, what we need to do there. They came and did a walkthrough and they're like, yeah, it looks like you got everything you're supposed to have after a few months. So we were like, all right, it looks like we're pretty much just about licensed for a daycare center in our home, so we can almost start this business. And we're just about there, but we don't have enough money because I was getting $400 per week in unemployment checks, and my wife was probably making about $400 from her daycare center. So we figured, let's stack up our money a little bit and we can maybe start a daycare center in like 6 or 7 months. Well, as fate would have it, as the Lord would have it, just about a week after having that conversation, my wife calls me on her way home from work. She's like, guess what just happened? I said, what? She's like, I just got fired. I said, for what? She's like, I wrote on a piece of paper to one of the parents saying I was starting a home daycare center and asked if she wanted to join my home daycare center. So just so y'all know, my wife is the nicest person, and I'm not speaking hyperbole. She is literally the nicest person I've ever met in my life. But she's also kind of naive sometimes. She would make the worst criminal of all time. So like if you doing some dirt, don't ever write it down, right? She wrote on a piece of paper, hey, I'm starting a daycare center. You should leave this daycare and join mine. And then left that paper on a piece on the table. So the other teacher in her classroom picked that paper up and read it. It was like, oh no, and took that paper to the director. That director called my wife in immediately and fired her right there on the spot. That's what happened. Yes, she would make the worst criminal ever. Just go ahead and put that out there. So she called me, said she got fired. It was the worst news ever because now we have an infant at home who was about 4 months old. I'm unemployed. My wife's unemployed. So I was like, we got to do something. So let's start the daycare center right now, which we did. We started the daycare center immediately. And we basically were, the most we could have in the home, I think was 6. I think we could have 6 kids at the house. And if each kid is paying you like $150 a week, that's some decent money, right? Especially if you're used to making $400 a week. So what I did is I started a nonprofit called the Pickup Game. I would rent out a gym every year, every summer, and I would have kids come and play basketball from like 9 in the morning until about 3 p.m. And in the middle of that time, I would sit all the kids down and I would just give them some kind of game. Like I would talk to them about what the long-term effects of bullying is. I would talk to them about what a credit score is. I would talk to them about how to use a debit card. So I would teach all these real young kids the stuff that I didn't learn in school. And a lot of these kids, like they were from the hood for real, but they was learning stuff that they wouldn't learn at school for sure, you know? So it was a really good program. And that's actually how I got this through that program. This is a a picture that I got from President Obama and a letter that I got from President Obama. I'm not going to read it, but Mr. Jordan Michael Harris, yeah, my middle name is Michael. I know that's crazy, right? And my parents have not named after Michael Jordan, by the way, but my name is Jordan Michael Harris. Thank you for sharing your story. Um, yeah, he just basically talked about the program that we started, and he sent me a picture with his signature and Michelle Obama's signature on it. So that's one of my prized possessions. I love that thing. Um, so my nonprofit, it did really well. I ended up handing that nonprofit off to the YMCA because we had grown the program we started with just 2 kids, and then we got it all the way up to about 110 kids that would show up every day. The YMCA helped me grow it. And once I got to the point where I said, man, I got to start making some more money, I went ahead and handed it off to them. And they took it, and then they ended up doing it for 1 year and closing it down. But that's what happens. So once again, I'm unemployed. My wife does have the home daycare, and it's going pretty well. And I'm like, I got to find a job, man. And right around that time, my old boss from the building maintenance company that I was telling you about that I got fired from, the guy who fired me, his boss ended up calling me and said, Jordan, I got a opportunity for you, man. I started working for this different cleaning company. I think you'd be perfect here if you could just help us get our Facebook up and going. You can help us get this website going because I learned how to build websites. And you can help us get a employee manual made. Like he had all these different things that he needed his company to have. He said, if you want to start, I can pay you this much. And as much as I did not want to do that because I wanted to start my own business, I had to do it. So I was like, okay, sign me up. So I did this job and I hated it. The boss, the owner of the company, was a complete jerk. Like he would all like again, I was responsible for starting things like the employee manual, the safety manual, Facebook page. I was responsible for doing stuff like that. But the owner of the company would always walk by my office and say, I want to see you sweat. I want to see you get out behind one of the machines and work all night. You need to be sweating. You need to do something, some manual labor. He would always say stuff like that. And it would just annoy me. Like, that's not what I'm here for, G. I wouldn't hire for that. But one day I walked into the office and I noticed all of the vent faces were off of the wall. Like every one of the vent faces off. And I'm like, I don't know what that's about. But I went to my office. I'm in there working. And then the owner comes in. He was like, hey, George, come here real quick. I want to talk to you about something. I said, all right. So he walks me into a garage that's probably about, I don't know, you could barely fit a car in it. Let's like barely fit a car in it. So I walked to the garage and that's where all of the grates were that covers the vents on the wall. It was probably like 15 or 20 of them. They're just all sprawled out on the ground. And I'm like, okay. And then I looked in the corner and I saw a bunch of spray cans in the corner. He was like, I told you I want to see you sweat. So this is my first job for you. I need you to spray paint all of these vent covers, all of them. And then once they dry, come back in here and give them a second coat and then put those back up there. I was like, this dude playing games. Like, what are we doing? So I'm in here, took my shirt off, wrapped it around my face because I was inhaling all these fumes. And if you're wondering, why didn't you raise the garage up? Well, I live in Kansas. It gets cold here. It was cold that day. So I could not roll that thing up. I could crack it at the bottom, but it was freezing in that joint. So I went ahead and spray painted them, left for a while, let them dry, came back, put another coat on. Like I said, I had my polo shirt wrapped around my face to keep from inhaling all these fumes and stuff. But that's just the kind of head games he would play all of the time. And one day I'm in my office and I was doing some data entry stuff, just typing in some information on an audit that we did. So I'm typing in the information and my boss comes into the room and he was like, hey, Jordan, I got to talk to you, man. And I had headphones on, listening to music, typing in my information on the computer. I said, what's going on? Now, keep in mind, this is not the owner of the company. This is my boss that I got along with really well, that recruited me from the other company. He was like, man, the owner does not like you wearing those headphones while you're typing in his numbers. That's what he kept saying, typing in his numbers. And he had said that to me like 3 or 4 other times, and it just annoyed me so much. But this time, I took my headphones off and I said, hey, man, what is today's date? And he told me, and I said, okay, cool. 2 weeks from today is my last day. So go ahead and put that on the calendar. He looked like he had just seen a ghost, but I was not playing. Wasn't lying. I didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't have any money saved up, but I knew I was tired of dealing with that stuff. I was already tired of people telling me what to do, when to leave, like when to show up, how much I was getting paid. I was already tired of that. The last thing I needed was the owner of this cleaning company with a Fu Manchu white beard who wore biker chaps to work every day, a long white hair down his back, like in leather coats. He's a real biker, like for real, smoking in the office and all that stuff. The last thing I needed was somebody like that breathing down my back, telling me what to do and how to enter his quote unquote his numbers. So he's like, okay. Of course he didn't like it. He's like, all right. So I went home later on that day after I got off work. So when I was at home, my boss called me. He's like, hey, man, I talked to the owner and he said, why don't you just make Friday your last day? I said, word. So I was like, okay. So I will make Friday my last day, but I knew that I needed some more money. So I was like, but you going to pay me for 2 weeks. He was like, okay, cool, deal. So they ended up paying me for 2 weeks, even though I only worked like 2 days or something like that after that. So here I was unemployed. My wife, actually had the home daycare up and going. We had a maximum of 6 kids that we could have, and she had her daycare at capacity all the time. Her daycare, if she lost a kid because they graduated and went to elementary school, that spot would be filled within 2 days. Like, it stayed full. So I was like, all right, I got to do something different. And that something is the one thing that I know more than anything else, because I have been employed by cleaning companies. The one thing I know is the cleaning industry. So I said, I'm going to start a cleaning business. So I used $45 for my unemployment check, which I know it sounds crazy, but I had to save up $45 because at that time, if I was going to go to Taco Bell, I had to look at my account first to make sure I had enough money so I could go to Taco Bell. Like, do I have $2 in this account so I can go get 2 burritos from Taco Bell? It was like that. Okay. And this is in 2015. All right. So I went ahead and I was like, okay, I'm going to start a cleaning company. I had to save up $45. I think it took me like 4 weeks to do that because I would get my $400. I would pay my bills off. I would get food and stuff for our family, and I'm going to put $5 aside. Next week, I'm going to put $4 aside. And I just kept doing that. And eventually I had $45 saved up. And I took that $45 and I bought a Dirt Devil vacuum cleaner from Walmart. And I was like, I'm in business. I took that Dirt Devil vacuum cleaner door to door. And I'm not saying that like, just saying like some kind of statement that people say all the time. I literally put a vacuum cleaner in the back seat of my Nissan Altima and drove and went door to door, knocking on people's doors saying, I need to clean. Like, I wasn't saying like, can I clean for you? I was saying, I need an opportunity to clean this building for you. I don't know who's cleaning it right now, but I promise you I'll do it better than them and I'll do it for cheaper. That's what I was doing. Like, without like nonstop. So I started a cleaning company with $45 of nothing but a vacuum cleaner. That's all I had. I figured if I got hired for a job, they would probably provide enough paper towels and other stuff, and I could figure the rest of it out. So I ended up taking, one of the things that I did is I got some business cards made. Ended up taking some business cards to a real estate group, and that real estate agent had just signed a group to a lease in one of their buildings. It was a dialysis center. And he was like, hey, Jordan, I'm going to take your business card to this dialysis center that just signed a lease with one of our buildings. Maybe they'll hire you. Crazy enough, they did hire me. That was the first job we ever got in my cleaning company. And I continued doing that practice, going door to door, telling people I need an opportunity. First, I wasn't getting hardly any traction when doing this. But then I continued to clean that building for about 2 or 3 months, super consistently, doing everything that I could possibly do to make that customer happy. And I said, hey, do you keep in mind, I am a young black man. At that time, I was probably 24 years old, 25 years old. So I went to not the owner, but I went to the director, the manager of this facility. And I said, hey, do you mind writing a letter of recommendation for me just to prove that I'm in business and I do a really good job? Do you mind doing that for me? And she was like, no problem, because you have done an excellent job. So she wrote a letter of recommendation talking about how good our business operated. It was just me. I was the only employee. But she talked about our business and made it look real cool. Like, oh, this company does an excellent job. They're always on time. They always stay late. They always do that. So I took that letter of recommendation to those same customers that I had been taking them to, and people started taking me seriously. And I started getting one account after another. One account, the one that was probably the sweetest, is I went to one of the accounts that I knew. So remember I was saying that owner that was a jerk? There was one account that I knew they were always struggling with. Every meeting, they would always talk about this one business that they had that they struggled with consistently. So I said, I'm going to take a letter of recommendation to that business. I'm not going to tell them I used to work for that company or anything. I'm just going to walk in here and I'm going to say, if I could clean this place better than the current cleaner at a lesser rate, would you give me an opportunity? And he said, absolutely. So I gave him a price. I promise y'all, I did not know what the other company was paying. I swear to this day, I did not know what they were paying. So I went and gave him my price, which I knew was going to be cheaper because it was just me. And he was like, yeah, I'll give them the 30-day notice. You can get started. That was the sweetest job ever because I got that from this jerk who was mistreating me all this time. Like it felt good. Um, so ended up doing that consistently. Ended up going from one account to two to four to six to 12 to it just started growing like crazy. And I finally got to the point where I started having to hire employees. And then I ended up asking my brother to quit his job to partner up with me. And you can actually see him on that magazine cover. That's he and I in that magazine cover back there. Um, so he ended up partnering with me. Now we split everything 50-50 in that business. And we've grown it to, let's just say it makes a few $1 million a year. All right. So we've grown it to a pretty substantial business. It's got maybe 70 employees or so at this point. Um, so right after my brother started working with me, partnered up with me, I'm looking at this daycare center that we've built. And at that time, I think the cleaning company was probably doing about $600,000 a year. So it was starting to grow. It wasn't doing any crazy numbers, but it was starting to bubble a little bit, right? So I'm looking at the daycare center and I was like, man, why are we still in this house? Like, because I told my wife, anything that I'm involved in, if it has a ceiling, meaning they say all you can have is 6 kids, you can't have more than 6 kids. I said, if we are in any type of business with a solid ceiling, I don't want to be a part of that business. We got to do something different. So I said, why are we staying in this house? Why don't we find a daycare center where we can have more than 6 kids? Like, why don't we find a daycare center to be in? She was like, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So uh, just before that, I'm sitting in my basement. And like I said, we're starting to get some things figured out, starting to grow a little bit. And I was in my basement. My wife had the kids upstairs running around, banging around. And somebody called me. I didn't know who the number was. I pick it up. This is Jordan. He was like, hey, Jordan, do you guys clean floors? And at that time, we had never cleaned floors before. And I mean like taking the wax off and putting more wax on the floor. It's called stripping and waxing. I had never done that before. Didn't have anybody in our company that did that kind of work. But without even hesitating, I said, yes, sir, we do. So did I lie? Yeah. He said, do you guys clean floors? I said, yes. He said, okay, I need a quote for 9 buildings that we have, maybe 10. I think it was 10 buildings that they had at the time. He said, I need a quote to clean all these floors, about 10 of them in a span of 3 weeks. Can you do that? I said, sure. So I started doing all kind of research to figure out how do we actually do these? How do we do this? How do we do this? Gave him a price. And thankfully, I reached out to one of my cousins who had experience because he worked for the school board as a janitor. So he knew how to do floors. So I talked to my cousin, told him what I was up to. And I was like, I'm sending this quote in just in case, just, be on standby. So I sent the quote in. The guy ended up calling me back. He was like, hey, we're going to hire you to do these floors. And I was like, this fool's crazy. But anyway, he ended up hiring to do the job. My cousin went and did those floors and they actually did a really good job. We made, I think, 16,000. I think it was 16 or $18,000 in the span of 2 or 3 weeks. I had never made that much money before. I could not believe it. So that helped turn our business completely around when that happened because they did such a good job doing those floors that same company called me and said, hey, could you clean our building Monday through Friday and do this on a 3-year deal? That contract separated us from anything we had ever done before. We went from being a small company with just a handful of employees to now having 20 something employees. It was crazy overnight. So then we started making it wasn't just like money, but it was actually a lot of profit that we were making. So right at the time when we was considering doing this daycare center, we were like really flirting with the idea of it, but we didn't know what location we should go to. It just so happened to be one of like a primary voting time. Like I don't even know what the vote was for. It was for like something local here in the area, a vote that we were supposed to be doing. And my wife's mom came over and she was like, hey, y'all should go vote real quick. I'll watch the kids. You can go vote. And we're like, nah, we don't really plan on voting for this. I'll vote for the president, but I don't want to vote for school board. Like those little things. I didn't really want to deal with that kind of stuff at that time. But she's like, no, you guys really should go vote. And I was like, all right. So we went to this building, a big church, because that's what we figured we were supposed to vote at. So we go to the church, we vote, and on the way out, I noticed like a big mural on the side of one of the walls in the hallway. And I walked to that mural and I was like, that's nice. And it was just like real colorful and playful. And I looked at one of the classrooms and it was also real colorful, real nice looking. I said, man, this place might be set up for daycare right now. So we went and looked at all these classrooms and they were set up for daycare. And I told my wife, we going to talk to somebody right now to see if we can get a daycare up and going. And she was big and pregnant about to have her second child. She was like, nah, I don't want to do it right now. I'm sweaty. I'm hot. I want to go home. So I was like, nah, we're not doing that. Fix yourself up. Let's go here and talk to somebody. So we went into the office, talked to a guy named Matt, exceptional guy. He said, you know what's crazy? I've actually been praying for somebody who could actually run a daycare center here because the church could use the funds. It would help the church congregation grow as well. But we don't have anybody in our congregation that knows how to operate a daycare. He said that they tried to run a daycare before and it failed. And I'm like, we can figure it out. So we ended up, like, I formed a contract and like show what numbers or which rooms we'd use, how we'd use the kitchen, how many kids we expected to have, how much money we'd pay the church. We did all these things and they went for it. So within like maybe 4 months or so, we had a daycare center up and going with 18 kids. So we went from 6 to 18 kids overnight. That daycare center went from 18 kids to about 30 in a span of maybe 3 weeks. And then I learned how to do Facebook ads, Facebook marketing. We went from 30 kids to 60 to 70 to 80. And then our capacity was hit. I think our capacity may have been at 70 actually. So we couldn't have any more kids than 70. And you know how I think. I don't want to be in a situation where all we can do is this. This is your ceiling. You cannot go past that. I don't like that. So I started talking to my wife and I'm like, what can we do to get more capacity? And I was like, they got a whole nother wing over there that they do like Bible studies and stuff. Maybe we can talk to them about letting us use those spaces. So we went and told them, if you allow us to use this space, we can almost double the amount of money that we're paying you right now. And they're like, bet. So we started using that. We went from 70 to 80 to 90 to 100 to 120 to 130, all the way up to 149 kids in this one building. And we did that over a span of maybe 2 years. I think in 2 years, we went from 18 kids up to 149 kids. And you can do the numbers on that. 149 kids times an average of about $180 per week is some crazy numbers. Keep in mind, there is a lot of help that you got to pay, right? There's a lot of teachers and directors and all that kind of stuff that you got to pay. But the revenue on that is crazy. So the daycare was growing like crazy. The cleaning company was also growing like crazy because we had just signed a contract with our county to oversee, I think it was 12 buildings. And one of those buildings was this 12-story building that everybody knows is the main courthouse in our area. Huge opportunity. It was 21 companies that bid on it. And my thought at this time was like, there's no way they're going to let our no-name company win this bid. But God had other things planned, and we actually won that account. So when we won the account with 10 buildings, we thought we were really doing something. But when you add this one on, Sedgwick County, huge account for us. It set us like, it was unbelievable. And it really put us on the map for other company or for other businesses in the area. Now they knew who we were. So instead of us having to reach out to everybody, begging for opportunities, now people start looking at us and saying, would you bid on this? Would you bid on this? Would you be interested in doing this for us? It changed everything. So now we start to look for our second daycare center because I'm telling you, I do not stop. I'm never satisfied. So I was like, let's find another daycare center. Thankfully, we knew my wife's old track coach owned a church on the other side of town. And I'm like, that's perfect because we don't want to open up anything too close to where we're at right now. So we asked him if he'd be interested in having a daycare center in his facility. He was like, heck yeah, I would. So we end up going to do some walkthroughs at his facility because I'm looking at like it would be really good if we could rent this space out from him, make some extra money here, couple maybe bring in, I don't know, $600,000 or $700,000 in the first year maybe. Um, so we're like, good opportunity. He's excited, we're excited. And we were doing like the third walkthrough with him, just pointing out things that need to be fixed before the state comes out because we were really serious about doing this at his location. And he was like, hey man, if you're interested in buying this from me, I'll sell it to you for $500,000. He's like, it's in really good condition. And he was, walking through all the different things. And I was like, okay, that's a thought because I had never even thought about buying a facility. My thought was always just rent the facility, right? So I was like, okay, cool. I'll think about that. So I don't think it was the next day, but I believe it was the day after that. I was driving home and I saw a real big, nice church campus with 4 buildings, and it had an auction sign in front of it. And I was like, I kind of am interested in buying a church now that he like kind of got my mind set on that. Like, I wonder if I bid on that, if I could actually win that thing. And sure enough, I put a bid in and we won it. So we bought a brand new facility where there's a church building with 4 classrooms in it and obviously a big sanctuary. And then there's a house that we converted into a preschool building. There's an office that we turned into my corporate office. Like that's where all of my business is headquartered now. And then there's an area in the back where there's like a garage, but there's an apartment on top of the garage. So we renovated all 4 buildings. And that's what I was talking about in that Dr. Umar video. That's the renovation that we did. Full renovation. Full. So we ended up putting the daycare center. It took a full 11 to 12 months. It was like right at a year doing the renovations on everything. And then we got the daycare up and going just a couple months after that. One of the issues that we ran into, which is not too pertinent to this story, but right after we finished doing all the renovations and we were just about to start, we had a start date of like 2 weeks out, I think. And my maintenance man called me when I was at home one day. He was like, I just opened up one of these doors, one of the rooms that we just painted and put brand new tile in. I opened up one of the doors and water came rushing out. So needless to say, that room, like the pipe had frozen and busted and the water shot through the wall. And it was going full blast for a full day. And the water was just stacking up in there. So when he opened the door, water literally came pouring out. We had to pull up all the brand new tile that we put down that cost, I don't know how much. Had to cut the wall from about 3 feet down all around the room. So reached out to insurance, and the insurance was like, sorry, Jordan, you have insurance covering that building, and that building, but not the building that you had the damage in. So sorry, we're not going to cover it. I had to pay $17,000 out of pocket to get that fixed. Hurt my soul, but you live and you learn, right? So that was our second daycare location. Like I said, the first one had 149 kids in it. It was always at capacity, always had a waiting list. And then this new one had a capacity of 99 kids. So we started I don't remember how many kids we started with at that location. I think it was maybe like 25 kids or so. And it's grown now to about 50 or 60 kids. That's where it's at now. So that was the first property that I actually bought, commercial property. I had bought a residential property that I rent out years before that. But so we continued to grow the daycare center. About 2 years later, which would have been in 2023, I had a lady approach me. She had a daycare center in a nearby town. And she was like, hey man, she said she was having some problems with finances basically. And she asked if I'd be interested in buying her daycare center for $500,000. I'm sorry, the building was $500,000, but if we wanted to have the building and the daycare center come with it, it was $800,000 that she was selling it all for. Looked at all the numbers and I'm like, nah, man, I'm not really comfortable putting that much money out right now. So I said, nah, we're going to say no thanks to that. About 6 months later, I saw that building was up for auction. And I was like, okay, I do have some money stacked up now. I probably could actually buy this property at this auction. Obviously, we do a pretty decent job at auctions because we won pretty well on this one. Um, we ended up buying the property for about a third of what it's appraised for. Let's just say that. So we did really well on the first one. So like I said, the lady was asking if we wanted to buy the property with the daycare center for $800,000. I said, no, thank you. Months later, that same property came up for sale. This time it did not have the daycare attached to it. It was just the property. So I told my wife, I'm going to bid on that. She's like, really? And I said, I'm going to bid on it. I'm going to put a number. And if it wins, it wins. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So I put a number on there and I couldn't believe it, but ended up winning that property too. So that ended up being, well, first let me tell you that story because it's a lot of ups and downs in this stuff, man. It's not all sweet. It's a whole lot of heartbreak and all kind of stuff that goes along with it. And I think it's important to tell you about those heartbreaking situations. So I reached out to her and I told her, okay, we're going to be buying this location. So I reached out to my bank. I was like, hey, we won this in an auction. They're telling me that I need to have this whole thing turned around in 10 days. So we got to get this thing moving. And my bank was like, okay, cool, no problem. So they worked on it for about 6 days. And they came back and they were like, no, I'm sorry. My dates are wrong. They gave us 30 days to close. That's what it was, 30 days to close. My first bank, they worked on it for about 20 days. And they came back to me and said, just so you know, we still need about 20 more days just to get this stuff finished. I said, that's not going to work, G. Like they told me, I got 30 days and you've already taken 20 of those days. We got 10 days left. We got to figure it out. He was like, okay. Then he called me back later on that day. He was like, I'm sorry. We're not going to be able to make that happen for you. So I took everything back from that company, from that bank, and put it in a different bank's lap. And I said, y'all, I need you to work a miracle for me because I've already put a down payment of like, earnest money was like $36,000, I think. Yeah, $36,000 cash. I had to take to them as the earnest money. So I was like, hey, new bank. I don't want to say the name of this bank. I was like, hey, new bank. I had a different bank looking at some stuff for about 20 days and they dropped the ball. I've got 10 days left. Here's all my information. Here's my tax returns. Everything is good. So can y'all please approve this loan so I can buy this property? Because I've already put 30 something thousand dollars as earnest money. And if I don't complete this deal in 10 days, they're going to go to the next buyer and they're going to keep my 30 something thousand dollars that I just put down. So I need this to go through. And they're like, well, the simple thing is just ask the seller to move the date back. Like just have her, instead of the 10-day deadline, just tell her to move it back 10, 15 more days. We'll be fine. I said, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Cool. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, my bank, I've been working with them, but they're not going to be able to close this deal until later on next month. And her response was, that's too bad. I'm not joking. She was like, that's too bad. If you can't come up with the money in 10 days, we're keeping your money and moving to the second person, the second bidder. And I was like, I don't cuss, but I was like, you blank. Like, I was hot, boy. So then the clock was really ticking. So I went and told the bank, hey, man, she's not budging. She's trying to keep our earnest money payment and move on to the second bidder. So I need y'all to make this miracle work. They worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. And they said, I think it was like 2 days before it was actually due, the money. It's like, I'm sorry, man. We can't make it happen. It's not going to happen. So I was like, so what are my options? And the bank was like, the only thing that you can do is you can just pay cash on this. It was like a few $100,000. That's like, you can pay cash on it. And you can do what's called a refinance, a cash out refinance. You can get most of your money back. And that's what we ended up having to do. I had to just pull out a few $100,000 in cash, take that to the title company on signing day. Here's the money. Give me the keys. Give me the title. Give me all the deed and all this stuff. So then I took all that information back to the bank and said, okay, I done put down hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now I need to get a cash out refinance and pull most of my money back out and then just give me a mortgage after that. So that's what we did. She played hardball, but thankfully we ended up winning that game because that is the third daycare center that we have now, preschool that we have. And altogether, we've had, I don't know what our numbers look like right now, but at one point I know we had 200. The last time I counted, it was like 225 kids or something altogether in our child care facilities, daycare and preschools. So that's Angel Wings. That's the the daycare. That's what we got going on there. The cleaning company. So we had about around the time that we bought our last daycare, we probably had, let's say, 50 something employees at that time. Then we ended up getting into a program called the 8A program. It's for minority companies. It helps you get different not minority actually. It's for disadvantaged companies is what it's called. So we end up getting into that. It helps you get like government contracts and stuff. We've grown our company almost double since we've gotten into that program. It's a huge opportunity for anybody out there that's growing a business and they're consistently trying to figure out where they fit in. You should definitely reach out to your small business administration and ask them, how do you get into the 8A program? It'll change your life, change our lives for sure, because it doubled our revenue overnight. Like we got one account at a federal courthouse, and the amount that we were making there almost equaled out to what we were making at all the other buildings we were cleaning. It was crazy. Then we got another contract at an Air Force base overseeing that whole thing. That was crazy. Like the profit on those things can be unbelievable. So, right after that, after we got the federal courthouse account, ended up getting a phone call from someone overseeing the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and he was like, "Hey, man, we're there's this thing that goes out every year. It's the Small Business Person of the Year, and we're considering putting you in it if you're like interested. Like, I'm thinking that you just might win if you throw your name in that hat." I was like, "That would be excellent. Like, I think that would give us a lot of credibility, a lot of notoriety. Like, it would just have our name all out in the street. That's free publicity." So I said, "Sure, go ahead and put my name in that hat. I'm not going to win that, but cool, go ahead and put me in there. At least I'll be nominated for it. That sounds good." So a couple weeks, probably 3 weeks passed. He called me and was like, "Jordan, you actually won. You're the Small Business Person of the Year." So once that happened, like we was, we was out there when that happened. Like people from all over the state of Kansas were reaching out saying congratulations. People were wanting bids all over the place. People within the government contracting world started taking us even more seriously because of this award that we got. And like you can see in this article, like Wichita small business owner nationally recognized for breaking barriers to success. These kind of articles were popping up all over the place, not just here in our area, but just all across the nation, recognizing different people for what they had done in their businesses. And when they saw that we grew a daycare center from 6 kids in a house up to 220 plus kids, and we grew a cleaning company from one person with a vacuum cleaner, $45 vacuum cleaner from his unemployment check, to now having 70 or so employees doing millions of dollars every year. They're like, that's crazy. Like people wanted to work with us, right? So that opportunity it was a blessing, man. Like we got to go to the White House. I took my family, my mom, my sister, my kids to the White House, sat in the Rose Garden, had President Biden come out, spoke to us. Kamala Harris came out, spoke to us. I bet you I was probably about 5 feet away from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. If it wasn't for these twins with red hair that was just buzzing around, getting on everybody's nerves, I would have actually gotten to meet them and shake their hands and everything, because everybody was shaking hands and I was right there just about to get up there. And these twins get up there and they just start talking and wanting to giggle and laugh with the president and do all this stuff and take a bunch of selfies. And they're like, all right, time for the president to go because he was just doing too much. So they ended up ushering the president off, ushering the vice president off. And I swear to you, I was within 5 feet of him easily. He was just like right there. Probably could have almost reached out and touched him. It was nuts. But that was an opportunity of a lifetime, man. Got to go to Washington, D.C., not meet the president, but have the president speak to us, sit there right in front of him in the Rose Garden, go through the White House, do all that stuff, man. It was crazy. And then not just to go to it, but like to actually have my kids and my wife and my mom and my sisters see that stuff too, because they knew what we came from. And for them to be able to see where we were, like, it was unbelievable to me. I think the coolest part of the trip was we went to this big fancy dinner the night before we went to the White House. We went to this fancy dinner at this huge hotel. And the hotel was once a Trump hotel, which I can't stand Donald Trump. Can't stand him. It was once a Trump hotel. So you know he loves gold stuff. So like all the mirrors were like had gold all around them. The toilets had gold on them, like for real, no joke. It was gold all over the place. And it was just super fancy, elegant place where everybody else who won Small Business Person of the Year for their state, because I won it for the state of Kansas. So every other person that won for their state, like it was them and maybe their wife, or it was just them. Like they were all taking it super seriously. They were passing business cards out. Man, I was like, we here to enjoy this. I had my kids like in this fancy place doing cartwheels and backflips, and I had the only kids there. It was 50 winners. I was the only person that had kids there. Everybody else was dressed in their fancy suits. Like I had a suit on, but everybody else was dressed in a fancy suit with their wife, and they're all stuffy and they're wanting to pass out business cards and mingle with each other and do all that. I was like, hey y'all, we here to chill. I want my black kids in here enjoying this and living life like they would live it at my house. And that's exactly what we did. It was a wonderful night. Um, yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy. And it helped us set ourselves apart for sure. Gave us a lot of credibility and it helped us grow to where we are right now. Small Business Person of the Year for the state of Kansas. So now whenever people see that on on our company resume, I guess you would call it, um, yeah, they definitely pay attention to it. You know what I'm saying? So that helped quite a bit. But that is basically where we are right now. You know, we've got the 3 daycare centers. We've got our cleaning company that has grown to 70 something employees. We plan on reaching out and jumping into other states here within the next couple of years. But I do feel like there's plenty more things for us to do in this state still. Um, it has been a crazy whirlwind when you think about where we were in 2015, which is just 10 years ago, to where we are now. I always tell people, like, you don't have to be the smartest person. You don't have to have these crazy connections, because I had no connections. I ran to no over and over and over. Like people had doors slammed in my face all of the time. But the typical person, when somebody gets a door slammed in their face, they just turn around and walk the other way. But when a door gets slammed in my face, I start looking for windows to jump through. I'm not going to quit. You're not going to get me to quit. I'm not going to stop until we get some form of success. I'm just not going to stop. So that's the most important thing when it comes to this business entrepreneur stuff, or just growing in general, man. Like, you can't quit at something. My brother told me years ago, um, it doesn't matter what it is that you want to do, as long as you continue working at it, you're going to find some type of success in it, no matter what it is. If I wanted to be a rapper, I can't rap a lick. But if I wanted to be a rapper, I bet you I could be a rapper. I know I could, because I just will not stop until I figure it out. I jump into this YouTube game. I don't know what I'm doing, but I bet you I'll be successful at it, just because I'm not going to stop until I figure it out. And you can do the exact same thing. We all can do the exact same thing. If somebody as simple as me can find the little success that I found, there's a ton of people out there who got so much more intellect, so much more articulate, They got so many more connections. They got so much more schooling. They got so much more wealth passed down to them. All of these things. So if I'm able to get the little success that I have, I promise you, y'all can do the exact same thing, if not way more than that. All right. That's pretty much all that I got for y'all, man. I just wanted to give you a quick background of where I got my money from. It was not passed down to me. It wasn't given to me in some big lump sum. It was just a slow grind. And I know people don't want to hear that because they're like, dang, I got to work for it. There's no secret button that you push and it all just happens overnight. No, it's no secret button. It's slow grind, work every day to get a little bit better. Make this version of yourself better than yesterday. That's the only thing you can really do. And the way I would do that is I'd wake up every morning. I would go to YouTube and I would type in whatever problem I had the day before. So let's talk about COVID. It changed everybody's lives. During COVID, I remember waking up one day and saying, how do you hire during a pandemic? Because I was having problems hiring people because everybody wanted to be paid a crazy amount out of nowhere. So that's what I would do. Any issue that I had the day before, I'd wake up and I would type in Google or type in YouTube, that same problem. And there's somebody on YouTube who has actually overcome that exact same problem that you're trying to figure out. And they're walking you through exactly how to fix that problem. So why wouldn't you do that, right? If you have issues with taxes, say, how do you overcome a tax issue? How do you overcome $20,000 in debt to the government? Somebody who has that experience is on YouTube explaining exactly how they did it. They're not telling you what they would do. They're not telling you, oh, this is a pretty good idea. Instead, they're saying, this is the problem that I had, and this is how I solved it. That's the perfect person to speak to, right? So that's what I did every single day, and it ended up working for us. So today, we've got the daycare centers. We've got the cleaning company, which has changed from a cleaning company to a building maintenance company. We do painting and everything. And then we've also got real estate buildings that we own, right? One residential, and then we've got one residential, and then we've got two commercial properties, and those are valued a couple $1 million. All right, so that's all I got for you. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. I know that was a long story, but I figured I'd give you the real game on like where the money came from. It's a slow grind, man, and it's an everyday grind. I'm not rich. My net worth is not super crazy. It's not crazy at all. A few bad days, I could be broke. You know what I'm saying? And that's just like anybody else. It just takes a few bad days, and that's part of why I continue to work every day, grinding, figuring out what that next thing is. So thank you. I appreciate you watching the video, man. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also leave me any kind of comments that you could think of. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Thank you. Take care. God bless. Peace.